Hey, so I took that city with all the gambling and stuff that I was playing around with, and I blew up all the gambling and just replaced it with a bunch of processing plants just to give it a try. I've been avoiding the processing plant path because so many people have said it is broken, and I can confirm it clearly is. Pretty stupid broken. You can make $43 million in just 3 hours of playing. But yeah, basically let me go through the general concept, right? So as with any specialization, the less traffic you have in your specialization area, the more money you're going to make. So in order to get no traffic through the specialization area, you got to realize an important thing, which is that these processor factories are going to create the same amount of stuff whether they have one guy working them or 300. So what you want is to have a population that's big enough theoretically to man these processing factories, but not to actually have anyone go to work there. So you make it so that in order to get there from your residential zone, it's a longer path than it is for your residents to just go up to this uh, factories, industrial zones, right? So I got a bunch of factories over here where people actually work, and then a bunch of processing plants over here where people don't actually work. So if we open the population layer, you can see there's one guy or 19 guys, very few guys at any of these processing plants, and that leads to very little traffic over here, which means that all the deliveries are super quick. The next thing to note is that while you're building up processor plants, it's really like there's a balance. You got to get the resources right, or else it's really easy to go broke because each of these centers costs 3,500 or tons and tons of money um, per hour to run, and they don't really pay off for several days. So you can either build up a huge pile of cash like I did by having the gambling center and then just fund the whole thing right away, or you can use some little cash earning tips like this one. Okay, so crime is always a problem, and health is always a problem, and fire is always a problem in cities with stupid people. So you've got to educate your Sims, but that costs a bunch of money. So one thing that I found is that you can actually turn off all your schools and get a reasonable education level. One, two, or three. Like right now, it's down to one, but it actually was up to three for a while with just public libraries. How do public libraries work? People will walk to public libraries and shop at them, which like exchange money for happiness, but the amount of money they exchange is zero, so that's awesome. They have to bring money with them, which means they have to have successfully worked at a factory before they can shop at a library, but once they do shop at a library, they go home and bring back both the money and the happiness. Um, and the cool thing about people walking to your libraries is that also reduces traffic. So that we got two things going on here that totally reduce traffic into this area. You notice that there's no traffic basically at all except for the delivery vans. So make sure that you have no commercial zones anywhere in your whole city, and then put a public library within walking distance of everybody's house, and you'll get a reasonable amount of education as well as no shopper traffic whatsoever. Everybody who shops will walk to the shop. So your only traffic at that point will be commuters driving to work and driving home. Um, and then you make sure that the shortest pass between the residential zone and the nearest job is the factories rather than your processing plants, and that's it. So you notice this used to just be a T entrance to the highway, and it still kind of is. So right here, the T, I just kind of made a little U within the T just to make it a little bit harder to get from the left to the right, because I was having a problem where people would drive up to the factories and say, oh, there's more jobs over here, I'll just go over here. And so I just wanted to give it a little bit of a pain in the butt to do that. So they still can go from this zone to this zone, but it takes them a long time, so people just tend not to do it. Um, I think, yeah. Another thing to note when you're making an electronic city, you want as few trade depots as possible, right? It's tempting at first to say, well, I'm going to need tons of plastic because I'm going to go throw down 20 trade, processor factories at once. So you throw down multiple plastic import things and export things, and that can tend to eat up like millions and millions of dollars. I actually went through like 10 million bucks just importing plastic and alloy and turning them into processors and then turning them into computers and having too much traffic to export them at a reasonable rate and stuff. Like, it's really easy to eat up money doing that. So you really want to just have a single trade depot with alloy, plastic, and processors at it, and just run like 2 processing factories until you're really in the green, and then add another factory, and don't fully max it out. Just let it produce 1 TV at a time until it's working and making a profit, and then add additional factories from there. It's just basically the same tips for building any kind of city. Take it slow, investigate any traffic issues, and really make sure to get a little bit at a time profitable and working properly. Yeah, don't unlock the electronics commerce division. There's 2 divisions. Electronics, which allows you to make TVs, and commerce, which allows you to export, use a trade depot with a freight thing to export TVs more quickly. But you're going to get that same upgrade over here. So there's no point in doing it over here in the electronics division. In the trade HQ whatever, what I did was actually get like about a $2 million a day income just making processors without making any TVs or anything. And then you get to unlock all of the add-ons to these all at once, rather than trying to pay. Like, you notice how these are costing me $1,000 an hour and $1,600 an hour. You want to really have a big income before you even bother with them. And then once you do, you can just add a bunch of TV producing little dudes. Little dudes who produce TV. Anyway, this is something you should really just try once, do it, and be like, okay, that's really easy. I'm not going to bother doing that anymore. It's not nearly as much of a challenge as having a much higher population density. I feel like every one of the specializations in SimCity is fun to do once, but the ones that are really fun to do for a long time are the more challenging ones, the difficult ones. And this is by far the least difficult specialization. It's just like free money, man. It's just like, yeah. Oh, another thing to note, if you have no commercial zones and tons of libraries, you're going to end up with billions of criminals, and there's nothing for them to rob. So there's just like 400 criminals. I don't have any. Both of my police stations are turned off. I don't need to fight crime. I don't know, man. If you just only use libraries for shopping, then criminals, they don't rob anything. They don't do anything. They just exist as criminals. I can't decide yet whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing in that you save money fighting crime. You don't have to have police departments anymore. But it's a bad thing because criminals don't go to work and don't bring home money. But that doesn't really matter if you don't care about population density, right? Like, when you're trying to make one of the more difficult specializations, like if you're just doing a mixed residential, commercial, industrial city where you're trying to maintain a reasonable profit while also growing your city bigger and bigger and fighting the traffic to make sure you don't go under, every criminal you have is taking away from your ability to increase the population density of your city a little bit. So you really want to not have very many criminals. But with the basically bug that you can fully fund a consumer electronics factory with only a single worker, you don't need population anymore. So the fact that some of your populace isn't working is actually kind of a good thing, because it reduces traffic and you still produce the same amount of stuff. So basically, I feel like the reason that this specialization is is broken, is because of the decision that they made that specialization buildings should work when nobody is actually inside of them working. I think that's a bug, and if they fixed it, that would make this specialization much harder. Look at this factory with one single worker doing its job completely. And I think probably that the reason that they made it so that you can run a government specialization building with only one worker is just to because, like, imagine a power plant, right? You go into a new city, you plop a power plant, and it says, I have a worker shortage, you need to give me workers. And then it starts working the second you give it a single worker. Imagine if a power plant produced a variable amount of power based on how many workers get to it. If you combine that with the closest job, shortest path logic, then it would be like a complicated thing that everyone would always have to think about just to always have enough residential zones within range of their power plant that the shortest distance to work would be at the power plant kind of thing. And I think that would just like I feel like they want this shortest pathway that the game works to kind of be hidden so that you don't have to know about it unless you're really interested in giving yourself a challenge. Like if you just want to build a city and have it be pretty, then you can just build a city and have it be pretty. So I feel like it's the easy to learn, hard to master concept of how to make games fun both for noobs and for pros is the justification for the problem with this specialization. Anyway, that's everything I know about electronic stuff, and I probably won't learn anything more because, like I said, it's way too easy. Oops.